Good morning. We're going to just take a minute to review area and circumference, which you probably learned a long time ago, but we're going to be using it a lot in the circle unit, so I just want to make sure that you have a good review before we jump into the actual geometry stuff. So, just to review, you'll be given this formula. You don't have to memorize it, but most people have it memorized. The formula for area of a circle is pi r squared, with r being the radius of a circle. So if here's a circle, the distance from the center of the circle to the side is the radius. And just for an extra little review, the distance across a circle through the center, so the entire way across a circle, is called the diameter. I'll just put a D for diameter. So the diameter is twice the radius, or the radius is half the diameter. Area is the space inside the circle. So, like if you think about a pizza, it's all the pizza that you would eat. Where circumference is the distance around the circle. So, kind of like the crust of the circle, that's circumference. Circumference is 2 times pi times r, the radius. And just one more little side note, pi is not a number somebody came up with like out of nowhere. It is the relationship between the circumference and the diameter. So if you take the circumference, the distance around, and you divide it by the diameter of any circle, you will always get 3.14 blah, blah, blah pi. So in the most basic form, we want to find the area and circumference of this circle. The 10.2 is the diameter. It's the entire way across. So the radius is half of that, so 5.1. So this is the number we're going to use, not 10.2. So the area is pi r squared, and all we're going to do is substitute 5.1 for the radius. So 5.1 squared is 26.01, I think. Hold on, I'll be right back. Just don't want to mess up these calculations. So you would type in 5.1 squared, and yes, 26.01. Now we could write pi and then 26.01, or like I'm doing here, 26.01 pi. This is written in terms of pi, so we still have the pi in the problem. You can also approximate the answer by using the approximately equal sign and do 26.01 times pi. And that equals 81.7. So the area of this figure is 81.7 meters squared. Or 26.01 pi meters squared. Circumference is 2 times pi times the radius. So 2 pi times 5.1. Because of the commutative property, we can multiply the 5.1 and the 2 instead of multiplying across the whole thing in order to leave it in terms of pi. We can basically switch the order of these because the commutative property means that those are still equivalent. So we have 10.2 pi as the circumference in terms of pi. This is the exact circumference of the circle. We can round it by doing 10.2 times pi. And we get 32.04. So both of these are accurate answers for the circumference of that circle. And you might notice that this is the same as the diameter, and some people say the circumference is diameter times pi. So either way you want to look at it. All right, so now we're going to go a little bit deeper, and we're going to be manipulating the equations a little bit more. This one says find the radius of a circle with a circumference of 106.81 centimeters. Well, we know the circumference, so we're going to be using the circumference formula. But instead of substituting for the radius, that's what we're looking for. Find the radius. So we're actually going to substitute over here for the circumference. And then we're going to solve for the radius. 2 pi is an actual number. Pi is not a variable. We can treat it like that sometimes, but it's not a variable. The only variable on this side is r. So in order to get the r alone, we're going to divide by 2 pi, because 2 pi is an actual number. And I'm just going to type this in, and you got to be careful. 106.81 divided by, and then put 2 pi in parentheses. Otherwise, it's going to do 106.81 divided by 2, and then multiply that times pi, because your calculator will always follow the order of operations. I'm going to round, so 17 is the radius. So that means you have a circle where the distance from the center to the side is 17 centimeters. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing, but with area. It says find the diameter, so we want the whole way across, of a circle with an area of 95.03. So we're going to substitute the area for the area. We got to take a little trip back to algebra here. We need to get the r alone, but first we need to get r squared alone. So we're going to divide by pi. 95.03 divided by pi is 30.25, and that's equal to r squared. You may remember from algebra the way that you would reverse squared. The opposite of multiplication is division. The opposite of addition is subtraction. The opposite of square is a square root. So we want the square root of both sides. So I'm going to take the square root of 30.25, and that gives me 5.5 as the radius. Okay, you can see I just typed it in right here. Now, you also may remember from algebra that it really is positive and negative 5.5 when you take the square root. However, since we're talking about a distance, we only want the positive number, so we're just going to go with 5.5. That's the radius. The diameter is twice as big as the radius, so that would be 11. And that's the answer. So we had to go through the radius to get to the diameter. All right, one more example of this kind of review. This one wants us to find the circumference if we already know the area. So we're basically going to follow the same steps as we did up here to find the radius, and then plug the radius into the circumference. So, we're going to plug in the area, and that equals pi r squared. You could pause the video here if you want, and then check your answer. All right, after you solve that, you got that the radius is 9, and we're going to plug that radius into our circumference formula in order to find the circumference. We can leave our circumference in terms of pi, which looks like that, or you can approximate it by typing that into your calculator. So these are the final answers. All right, I hope that that was a good little review. I'm going to come back in a minute with how to find arc length and sector area.